Here we go. And we've got some attendees filtering in. And Director Ryan and Commissioner Scanlon, when you're ready to kick off, we are live in public session.
You're muted, Commissioner.
Details. Welcome everyone to the September, what day? No, it's October. I'm back from Europe and jet lag. I have full disclosure. October 18th, 2022 meeting of the State Board of Land Commissioners. We do have a relatively short meeting today. We did not have an executive session, so we are beginning together in public session. And with that, I'd ask Director Ryan to call a roll call.
Happy to. Commissioner Heath.
Here.
Commissioner Chavez.
Here.
Commissioner Scanlon.
Here.
Commissioner Frobe.
Here.
And Commissioner Clark.
Here.
All five of us are present on the Zoom. We're not in person, just to make that clear to whoever listens to this recording in the future.
Wonderful. With that, our full virtual meeting, back to old times, Director Ryan, indeed, with all of us online. I'd like to turn it over to you for any announcements.
I only have some things I'll comment on during the staff report.
Okay,
So I can skip that.
wonderful. Hold on one second. I'm having technical difficulties. I'm back. Okay, wonderful. I'm actually having trouble pulling up the agenda, which is kind of my issue.
I can help us if you'd like.
Yeah, why don't you, well, I try one more thing. Go ahead and get us rolling.
And I don't see Vanessa on the call for directors for an EDO report. Nick?
Director Ryan, I just got a text from Vanessa. She's just heading back to
Okay.
her office from a governor's meeting.
We'll take her out of order when she rejoins. So the first item then is the staff report, tab 1 in the books. You've all read that. This is sort of the update on some of the work that's ongoing during the month. No decisions are requested, but just an opportunity for us to let you know about a few things going on. And so any questions about any of the information you saw in here? You see nodding heads. I would just add, we hired 2 new folks this month to the Transactions and Record Services team. Aaron Hurlbert and Edith Bryant both join Andy's team down there. They're going to be great additions. We've still got 1 open position on that team, but we are close to a full complement of staff as an organization. And I just want to say welcome to those 2 new folks. And thank you to all of those on the staff here who helped with the interview process. And commissioners, when we're back in person, we'll make some in-person introductions to those folks so you can know their faces and what they're doing for the organization.
Awesome. All right, thankfully I managed to get the agenda to open despite my best attempts to keep having a problem. With that, I think we're ready to move on. We do have some final action items, starting with our oil and gas lease auction and Katie.
Commissioner, real quick before Katie kicks off. I was getting.
Oh, no, public comment.
Yeah, just wanted to
If
make
there's
sure
any
that-
public comment related to anything that's not on our agenda today, please raise your hand and we'll give you an opportunity to talk with us.
So attendees listening, you can use the raise hand feature on your browser window to address the board with anything you'd like to comment on, not on our agenda today. And Commissioner, I'm seeing none. And while I was stalling for time in that moment, Vanessa joined us. I don't know if
Oh,
you-
wonderful. Let's go back to Vanessa. I see you, Vanessa. You want to give us a quick report from DNR?
Sure, apologies. I was coming back from the governor's office. Yes, a couple things happening in the executive director's office. Oh, sorry, apologies for the record. This is Vanessa Mazzal. I'm a policy advisor with the Department of Natural Resources. And thanks for allowing me to update you this month. So within the executive director's office, we recently closed the legislative director's position and are now interviewing for that role. So hopefully, fingers crossed, by the start of legislative session, we'll have someone firmly in place. We also just recently closed and haven't yet started interviewing for a new position, which I think I mentioned last month. It's an assistant director for energy, and it's really with a strong focus on renewables. So this person will be a great partner for State Land Board in their expanding renewables portfolio. And then we are about to launch or post our tribal liaison position. That should be out within the next week, maximum 2 weeks, I think. We have a couple things. There's an RFP out right now for the pollinators report that I think I've also mentioned. The legislature tasked the Department of Natural Resources and Department of Public Health and Environment with producing a report to make recommendations for a regulatory framework for pollinators. At this point, there's no clear regulatory structure for invertebrates at all. And there are some potential listings coming up that are, Endangered Species Act, Federal Endangered Species Act listings that could affect some of the work of not only the land board, but certainly DNR's work elsewhere in particular in the Eastern Plains. So that's a significant concern. So that RFP is open right now, and we're certainly looking forward to getting that moving. Similarly, there's an RFP that I think just got posted that's sort of tangential to us, which is someone to begin to lead a statewide conservation and climate planning initiative that is part of bringing together several directives from the governor's office and the state legislature. Shifting gears to OGCC, we've recently deposited $8.3 million in the new account to initiate, or to expand rather, the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission's work mitigating orphaned wells, and they just finally received the deposit or open an account to receive a deposit of $25 million from the federal government to get that initiative up and running, which is very exciting. So that's coming through the federal infrastructure dollars. We have in the Department of, or rather Division of Parks and Wildlife, I think the hot topic certainly, and there's been a lot of interest in the recent wolf depredation incident that took place up in Northwest Colorado outside of Meeker. The truth is that we are still very much examining and analyzing that situation. They haven't confirmed 100% that that's a wolf pack. If it was a wolf pack, it's likely one that would have come across the border from Wyoming. So certainly not one that that we've been tracking very closely recently. So there were, I think at this point, there's roughly 20 carcasses that have been found, and they're still studying the situation, and I think we'll have more to report on that hopefully shortly. Certainly a lot of interest in the public on the outcomes of that situation. And I think in terms of the Division of Water Resources, or rather the Colorado Water Conservation Board, the kind of big news I think on that front is that we're very much in the throes of negotiations with the Bureau of Reclamation on the Upper Colorado Drought Recovery Program and Endangered Fish Species Recovery Program, and there are significant dollars that came online just recently, or that will be coming online rather, through the department or through the Bureau of Reclamation to the department, as we understand, for Upper Colorado Basin related projects and programs. So that's exciting, but they have really only recently issued a framework for the lower basin. So we're waiting to see, and in discussion with Bureau of Reclamation on how those dollars might get allocated. I think, well, on the federal front, a couple of just updates. I don't think we mentioned last time, also relevant to state landward parcels in particular in the southeast, that there is a proposed listing for the tricolored bat, a proposed Endangered Species Act listing for a tricolored bat down in southeast Colorado. It would be a threatened species within the range in Colorado, and that's something that certainly we're tracking very closely and have provided some comments on. And then on the resource management planning that we've discussed a few times, there are 3 major initiatives being undertaken right now in partnership, certainly in cooperation with the state. One of them is focused on Gunnison sage grouse recovery or planning, developing appropriate land uses on federal or public lands in particular. Rather BLM public lands in particular. And then that's in the Gunnison Basin, largely in Southwest Colorado. And then the greater sage grouse effort up in the Northwest. Similarly, that species is not listed as the Gunnison is, but that we certainly want to avoid a listing, so that those discussions are underway. And we've been in cooperating agency conversations on that. And then finally, there's a statewide initiative to plan for habitat connectivity for big game species. And that's kind of a first of its kind initiative. We expect some interim guidance from the headquarters office of the BLM on that front as well, hopefully imminently. And then recently got word that the Eastern Colorado Resource Management Plan, which covers the Royal Gorge Field Office, which is essentially the entire eastern half of the state, public land. There's the resource management plan initiative for that is kind of going to be reinvigorated. We expect to see some movement on that, and hopefully a final record of decision within the next couple of months, as I understand. And I think with that, I'm happy to take questions. Oh, one other interesting proposition. We did just get word that the Department of Interior has proposed a mineral withdrawal for parcels in the Thompson Divide area, which is kind of situated between Paonia and Carbondale and Aspen, mostly in Gunnison and largely Gunnison and Pitkin County. So that's another initiative that we have not yet really closely examined, but has been of significant interest to DNR and to a lot of our constituents. And that's what I've got. I'm happy to entertain questions if I haven't covered anything, happy to address that.
I do not see any. Thanks, Vanessa. Glad you could get across the street and call us.
Thanks, everyone.
And I think Director Ryan, you had a staff report that maybe I blew right by when what I really want to do is talk to Katie, apparently.
I mentioned the staff report and asked for questions and introduced a couple of new folks on the TRS team.
That was the same as your director's report?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Greg?
I didn't want to blow by announcements, and Commissioner Chavez, I'm going to put you on the spot, but I think it belongs here. I think it would be helpful just on the record if you let people know that you're out per your email to me the other day, what you learned on your visit with Tanners.
Yesterday. I spent three and a half hours on the Bohart Ranch, just touring basically from the airstrip south. I have to admit, their operation is pretty impressive. I'm just still amazed at how they manage an operation on sand. I mean, we're driving down these roads and it was the sand. I mean, he had to be in four-wheel drive the whole way, but they've managed the stewardship, keeping the grass growing, keeping the cattle fed, the stewardship of the land. It was pretty impressive. But that was basically it. Just again, touring around, looking at the things that we hadn't seen. And I was with Nate and his dad, Dick, I think is his father's name. But yeah, no, it was, and they were just, in regard to, we're all kind of they're in the dark on, what's the next step, as we move forward in this process. They really didn't know. And I said, well, neither do I. So there's nothing I could have, nor would I have, but they're just anxious to, figure out what their future is. But yeah, it was a good morning with them.
Good. Thanks for doing that.
Perfect. All right. Anything else we need to hear from before we turn over to Katie? Katie, I've only been trying to talk to you for like 10 minutes because I've been a little discombobulated. So I'm super glad you're on. And this
Well,
is
thank
final action item A, our oil and gas lease auction.
Yes, well, I guess it's now afternoon. So good afternoon, commissioners. For the record, Katie Stitt, oil and gas specialist. And I'll be presenting the November 2022 lease auction, the standard list today. See if I can make this go. And maybe I should check. Are you guys seeing the PowerPoint? Because I had
Yes.
technical difficulties earlier and
Yep.
playing with it. Okay, great. So the current auction list today is going to reflect a combination of operator and staff nominations for new leasing opportunities in various areas of the state. And before I dive into the list, since our office has quite a few new staff members over the past couple months, and we have a new commissioner on board, and welcome. I wanted to include some background on our auction process in the cover sheet. So that was an attachment to the packet that you guys all got and it was on the website. And I'd like to just approach this list for a moment at the 30,000 foot level from why we pursue new leasing opportunities in oil and gas. So operator nominations typically fall within a project boundary where they're already working on a development, or operators believe that there's a resource present and they're going to conduct exploratory activity, which could be seismic surveying, other core sampling, any type of exploratory activities to confirm that there's a resource there. Staff nominations, on the other hand, are typically an assessment of lands that may be attractive to multiple operators based on the development activity with surrounding areas to those tracts. So this list has both of those included on it. For the trust, oil and gas related activities generate between 70 to 80% of our revenues each year. So while there is a financial consideration for leasing for a commodity in demand, we make a lot of efforts and take care to ensure that any recommendations we have for leasing for oil and gas happen in the most responsible way possible. So we include requirements in our lease called stipulations. So we protect wildlife, plants, and ecosystems. And we also want to make sure that we can conduct multiple uses on the property. So as part of our review, we ensure that the different uses we have, agricultural leasing, renewable energy, are all compatible with oil and gas. And this is part of ensuring that the trust lands can generate revenues for generations to come and be in good condition to do so. So all new leasing opportunities are important because new wells have to come online to keep current levels of production. And new leases are one way to encourage new wells to be drilled. The majority of production and revenue on a well happens the first 18 to 24 months. So new wells come online, everybody makes some money, and then typically the production will taper off and they can operate for many years, but it's at a lower production level than what happens when they first come online. So if new wells aren't drilled, production levels will drop, and that also means our revenues will drop. And that sounds very mathematical, I guess, in the background. So as a real world example, most of our tracts on this list are in Weld County, and Weld County is the top producer of oil and gas in Colorado, and they rank number 4 in the country for oil and gas production. So a lot of the nation's oil and gas comes out of Weld County. Weld County last year generated about 131 million barrels of oil. That's countywide, not just on state trust lands. And that sounds like a lot of oil, but that only represents about 6.5 days worth of demand for oil from the United States. So keeping production levels relatively at current levels is important to make sure that the demand is met for our nation. So this flow chart shows the process through which an oil and gas well is drilled. I also included it in the packet. It's also available on our website. And I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this slide, but I do want to highlight 2 takeaways from this chart. The first is that leasing is the first step to development, but it doesn't guarantee anything's going to happen on the property. Historically, only 12% of the leases our office has issued have ever moved into production, which means 88% of them never have anything happen on the property. And despite this, we still make money because of the rentals we receive for those leases. Second, I want to point out is that we are not a regulatory agency, which means even if we issue a lease on a property, the operator still has to seek all the permits and approvals from the relevant state regulatory agencies and local governments. So we're treated like every other private owner when they want to take activity on their property. And so with that, I just wanted to pause and see if there are any questions on the process before I jump into the list. Okay. So for the November auction, the tracks for your consideration today are the reddish orangish squares on the map. And the standard list consists of 19 tracks, which is approximately 9,300 acres, located in counties across the Front Range and out onto the Eastern Plains. And I've highlighted those in the bluish tint. These tracks have all been leased in the past for oil and gas, and some very recently, and are in the path of current development or are in areas with active exploration activities happening. So the activity in Douglas, Lincoln, Kit Carson, and Kiowa, and also Fremont. So basically everything south of I-70 is what we would consider exploratory. We think that the operators out in Kit Carson, Lincoln, and Kiowa for this particular set of nominations are probably targeting helium. The tract in Douglas County was actually a staff nomination because it's immediately adjacent to a planned horizontal development project in Elbert County, just to the east. And those Elbert County horizontals would be the southernmost horizontal wells in the state. So the application of that type of drilling technology would be new in this part of the state. The nominations in Arapahoe, Adams, and Weld County are new leasing opportunities within a producing field. The tracts would be offered at the board's. Sorry about that, alerts. These tracts will be offered at the board's standard 20% royalty, and the auction would open on energynet.com, which for those who aren't familiar, it's like eBay, but for different types of leasing opportunities. They'll be offered starting Thursday, November 10th, and the auction closes 1 week later on the following Thursday. As I detailed in the cover sheet, the tracts were reviewed per the board's policy, and staff has included specific recommendations for stipulations as outlined on Exhibit 2 to the packet. The stipulations addressing staff and CPW concerns related to plants and wildlife reflect the current nominations that subject matter experts are recommending, so specifically CPW. Their current wildlife recommendations are up to date. And the board has seen these stipulations in the past, but I would be happy to answer any questions you might have had on the stipulations that were in the packet. Okay. So with the information provided in the cover sheet as well as the presentation today, staff is recommending the board approve the standard list for auction and lease with the stipulations provided on Exhibit 2. And I've included the text of the board order that was in your packet, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Terrific, thank you. Thanks, Katie. Any discussion or questions from commissioners? Not that I can see on my screen. All right, we will open it to public comment. Nick, is there anyone from the public who would like to comment on this agenda item?
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner. Members of the public, use that raise hand feature on your meeting viewer if you'd like to address the commissioners about this agenda item. No hands, Commissioner.
All right, terrific. With that, we will need a motion. The board order is in front of us and in our packet. Do we have a motion?
This is Commissioner Chavez. I move we approve the oil and gas lease auction for November 2022.
Motion from Commissioner Chavez. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Clark. We'll call a vote. Commissioner Chavez,
Yes.
Commissioner Clark,
Aye.
Commissioner Frobe,
Aye.
Commissioner Heath,
Aye.
and the chair votes yes, that motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
All right, we are going to move on to a solid mineral, our agenda item, solid minerals lease.
And
All
while
right,
while you're
commissioners.
pulling some stuff up, I'm working on
This-
getting Fred and Pat brought to the panel.
Okay, cool. And
Excellent.
Ben's with us.
I am indeed.
Wonderful.
What can you guys see right now?
We see your PowerPoint with the slides on the side.
How about
There
now?
you go.
Does that look right?
Yep, that's it.
Excellent. Okay. Nick, how are we doing on, do we have the folks from Peabody up as well?
Fred and Pat are on, and I'm working on getting them promoted to panelists so they can be interactive if there are questions.
Excellent. While you're doing that, commissioners, for the record, this is Benjamin Teschner, your friendly neighborhood solid minerals manager. I'm here to talk to you about solid minerals lease 102410, which is a coal mining lease in Routt County. We have, I believe, Pat Sellers from 20 Mile on the line, Fred Eden, who is also from 20 Mile, and Peabody Energy, which is their parent company. Are there others as well, Nick?
We have
Do
Nick
do we have
Armando.
Miranda and Nicholas as well?
Nick Armando here. Miranda's not with us at 20 Mile. We also have Tia Ashley and Nathan Tisdall.
Excellent. Thank you very much. What you see in front of you is the working face of the underground coal mine, 20 Mile. Is as I said, an underground operation and called a longwall mining operation, which is a very sophisticated form of underground mining, and used almost exclusively for coal. So the big takeaway here is we want to make the last coal that we mine in Northwest Colorado state coal. And in order to do that, staff is recommending that you approve an extension to the royalty rate reduction at 20 Mile that was approved by a previous board in 2017 that brought the rate from 8% down to 5% to align with neighboring operations and especially BLM rates that have been approved over the last few years. We're going to talk about this is a little bit more complicated presentation than I typically give. So we're going to talk first about the 20 Mile coal lease, what happens there, a little bit of history. Then we're going to talk about coal, energy, and Northwest Colorado specifically. Commissioners that were at our board meeting in Craig a number of months ago will remember that the power plants in that area, the coal-fired power plants in that area are slated for closure. And there are a lot of interesting consequences that come along with that. The rate, why this rate was approved in the first place, and staff's justification for recommending that you approve a continuation of that rate reduction, and then finally the staff recommendation in specifics. So this lease is located in central Routt County, quite a few miles west of Steamboat, sort of on the way to Craig and south of Hayden, if you left Steamboat. Zooming in on that area, the lease area here, there's a couple things to orient you to this map. Our state-owned minerals are shown in gray, and the state-owned surface and minerals is shown in blue. The lease area is shown in yellow. And there's a couple interesting things about what's happening in this area. One, this is an entirely underground mine. And so the surface expression on the state land board property is extremely low. In fact, And this, all the areas shown in blue that's in the lease area is in the stewardship trust and is being managed as part of that program. So coal is mined from the state lease, and then moves off of underground. It moves outside of state property and comes to the surface at the 20 Mile Mines facility, which is located on deeded property south of a couple miles south of our lease area. From there, it goes by rail up to the Hayden Power Plant, which is located off of the main highway between Steamboat and Craig. So I want to take this opportunity to note that staff recently visited this property, and a number of us did. And since you're not normally accustomed to seeing us in these outfits, I've labeled the us for you so you know who we are. But one, this was a great opportunity for staff to get out, and many staff who don't necessarily get to go to a lot of properties. And also just to show you that we were recently there and we got to see some of these things that that I'm going to show you in some later slides. So let's talk about coal and its role in Northwest Colorado. On this slide, Craig Station Power Plant, but on the following slide here we have the Hayden plant, which is the one up in the upper left, that's fueling. That's being fueled by the coal from the 20 Mile Mine. The Hayden plant is currently scheduled for closure by Xcel Energy, and in 2027 they plan to close Unit 1, which is one of the coal power generating units, and by 2028 close Unit 2, which is the final unit, and at which point this plant will be decommissioned or moved to something different. Similarly, in Craig, nearby, the Craig station is scheduled to close its units progressively as well, with final closure coming in 2030. The big takeaway from the perspective of the question you're being asked today is the quantity of coal necessary to supply these plants until closure is effectively fixed, right? So the question isn't really whether we're going to burn coal in Northwest Colorado. It's we're going to burn this much coal, and where is it going to come from? And part of staff's recommendation here is trying to promote the idea that we want it to be off of our state leases rather than somewhere else. Here's another good shot of the working face with some of your staff members as well in attendance, and I believe that's Pat in the background showing one of us how this operation works. So as we're looking at, we're considering this request, staff looked at some other operations, specifically coal operations in Colorado and in, specifically kind of in this kind of coal market area. The most comparable comp is the West Elk mine, which is primarily on BLM ground. And the BLM approved an 8% to 5% royalty reduction at the West Elk back in 2001, and reapproved that reduction periodically, most recently back in 2021. This is sort of the best. This is the best comp because from the BLM's perspective and historically from the land board's perspective, we've done underground mines at a different rate than surface mines. And underground mines have a slightly lower rate than surface mines with respect to their royalty. And but similarly, the Trapper mine and surface mines up in Northwest Colorado, including Trapper, that the state land board has a large lease with the Trapper mine, had its BLM royalty rate reduced from 12.5% to 8%, which is the surface mining rate as recently as. So the takeaway is that the BLM and has kind of set this market right now, and it set it down at this 5% and 8% with the underground and surface rates respectively. And as the state land board, staff is recommending that we make sure our lease remains competitive in this market. The second reason for recommending this rate reduction is that this mine is more expensive to mine and slower to mine than it used to be in the past. The reason for that is because the miners have begun going deeper, and in doing so, they've moved down. I don't know, is it 100 feet maybe down to the wedge seam, which has some geotechnical challenges to it, specifically keeping the roof and the walls up in a safe position so that miners can do their work safely and the coal can be extracted safely. To be clear, this is always a part of underground mining, but it has to be done more with this other coal that they're targeting. So what you see in front of you is a machine called a roof bolter. And this is one of kind of the limiting factors on how fast you can mine is how fast you can go in and put bolts into the roof and secure it so that you can continue to move ahead and advance the mining phase. This is a chart coming from, or a table. This is also in your board packet for the commissioners that are following along that way, showing the annual revenues from this lease over the past decade. There's a couple things to point out here. One is that there's a break here between fiscal year 2017 and fiscal year 2018, at which point the previous board approved that royalty rate reduction to 5%. This is this is either the first or second most, this lease generates either the first or second most revenue. It's either 20 Mile or Trapper, depending on the year in the solid minerals program. But you'll notice that there's these years where we have substantially less revenue from this lease. And what's happening here is not that the mine isn't mining coal. It's just that they're not mining our coal, right? So they're in some of that area that is owned by Trapper or owned by another private landowner, and are paying royalties to them instead of to us, right? And in these cases, it's mostly related to the mine plan and sort of the geography of the lease. But by continuing with this 5% royalty rate, we're encouraging 20 Mile to stay in our coal rather than create a new plan and go somewhere else to find some cheaper coal. Collectively, this 10-year period represents over $25 million in revenue to the school trust. So part of staff's recommendation is entirely founded on this fiduciary duty. That staff believes that this is in the best interest of the beneficiaries because we're encouraging 20 Mile to mine the rest of the coal from our lease and supply the remaining coal needed for the Hayden plant from our lease area. So staff is recommending the board extend the reduction from 8% to 5% for coal mining lease 102410 through August of 2028. And here's the board order for your convenience.
Terrific. Thank you, Ben. Comments, questions from commissioners?
This is Commissioner Chavez. Ben, how much coal is left in there if it wasn't decommissioned? Another 20 years, 10 years?
My understanding, I'm gonna yield to Pat on this after I sort of rudimentarily answer the question. But the issue in Northwest Colorado is not a lack of coal. There's plenty of coal. The issue for whether coal mining continues in Northwest Colorado is about who's going to buy it and where is it going to go. And if we don't have plants to burn it, that substantially decreases the market. And if so, when those plants close, that's
that changes what happens with these coal mines. And at minimum, I would think we're going to be producing a lot less, even though the coal is there's still coal in the ground to be mined. I don't know if Pat would like to expand on that at all.
Sure. Right now within our mine plan, there's 23.8 million tons of coal that could be mined. Of that, 19.8 of it is state coal, or 83% of what's in the mine plan is state coal.
I see Commissioner Heath.
Right. I'm not sure who the person is to whom I should address. Ben, maybe you or Pat. What's the plan for the conversion of those plants once we hit that period when it will no longer be mined?
I don't know how to fully answer that question. I would have to direct that to someone from Excel, but I'm happy to see if I can figure that out for you and bring it to you at a later moment.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Froh.
Hi, thanks for a great presentation, Ben. Had a couple of different questions. I'm just curious if when the plants nearby close, is there anything that prevents the State Land Board currently from exporting the coal to other plants that are still using coal outside the state, understanding there's an economic impact from transportation, but at this time, is that an option for the state?
There's nothing in our lease that would prevent that. So, from the perspective of, from the perspective of the business, this business line, that would be, a beneficial revenue move for us. Again, you'd be approving this extension through 2028, and that's approximately the point at which Hayden is closing. So, if we get to that point, and 20 Mile finds a different market for this coal, I would expect we would be coming back with another conversation about whether it makes sense to continue this royalty rate, let the rate extension expire and move back up to 8%, or what. But I think that sort of remains to be seen.
Right. So in other words, we'll have a chance to look at that close enough to when the supplies are no longer going in state. Then the commissioners at the time will have a chance to take a look at that with the lease renewal.
Yeah, if it becomes an issue, right? I mean, I think that's I think Peabody and 20 Mile are going to have some decisions to make around the future of this mine past the life of the Hayden plant.
So a few other following questions, if I might. One is, I imagine that the terms of the lease and the expectation is, again, that none of the activities over the next 5 years would compromise the surface of the lands, right?
Correct. That would be outside of the mining plan.
Okay. And then I wondered, are there any other, wouldn't seem so, but any other considerations that might be non-monetary that you have thought about in connection with the renewal of this lease that relate to maybe access or reclamation or anything else?
Yeah, so I mean, we did consider that and did a little brainstorm on that. Frankly, there's so little impact on our surface, and there was two things. One, there's very little impact on our surface, and two, staff is really comfortable with the DRMS permit on this mine and their management of reclamation. Most of the reclamation that's going to take place out here is not going to be on us because of the limited surface expression. But even so, the regulations for coal at DRMS are a little bit higher standards than others, and so this is a mine that they're paying attention to very closely, and has a good history of conducting that type of work, and certainly from my perspective, a really strong lessee with respect to stewardship. So,
may I have one more question?
Absolutely.
Commissioner Scanlon?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, kind of related to the future and thinking ahead, what steps or how does the State Land Board staff consider alternative uses 5 years from now? Whether it's injection of, carbon storage, or it's, is there a carbon credit associated with not mining the rest of it that might be quite valuable at that time? Is there a process where you all are looking at what some of the future options might be?
Yeah, so less with this property, but we already have interest from solar lessees out at the Trapper mine, which is closer to Craig, it's a different property and it has some different characteristics that make it maybe better for that particular use. But so we're exploring things like renewables. Because especially when these power plants go offline, there's going to be excess capacity in these transmission lines, which is attractive to those lessees. And so I'd yield to David Rodenberg, our renewables manager, to speak more to that. But that's something that he and I and Trapper have been discussing. In this mine, I have not gotten requests, and to the best of my knowledge, other staff have not gotten requests specifically related to a post-mine land use related to the mining infrastructure or those sorts of things that are on this property. Staff is also exploring geologic carbon storage. Again, not necessarily on this property, but all of these things I think are open for discussion, and you will be hearing more about geologic carbon storage in the coming months, as that's something the minerals group is working on. But again, not necessarily with this property.
Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you, Ben. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? I am not seeing any. I'm wondering if Ben, or any of the folks from 20 Mile or Peabody have anything else they'd like to say.
Not right now, we don't think.
Okay. You're not required to. All right. With that, Nick, let's see if there's any public comment related to this agenda item.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner. Folks, use the raise hand feature if you'd like to make a comment. No hands, Commissioner.
Okay. With that, we do have the board order in front of us, and in our packet, we will need a motion if someone would like to do so.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Heath.
Yes, I move that the board approve solid minerals lease 102410, the royalty rate reduction extension as contained in our board packet.
Thank you, Commissioner Heath. Motion, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
This is Commissioner Chavez. I'll second.
Second, Commissioner Chavez. We will call a vote. Commissioner Heath.
Aye.
Commissioner Chavez.
Yes.
Commissioner Frobe.
Yes.
Commissioner Clark.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. That motion passes 5-0. Thanks, Ben. We appreciate the presentation.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you.
All right. And then Nick, we're to the board leasing agenda. Are you doing that with us today?
I am super excited to let you know that Andy Bissett.
Oh, the real Andy's here.
That's
Okay.
right. Good to be with you again, commissioners. Andy Bissett, Transactions and Record Services Manager. We have the October 2022 board leasing agenda for your review and approval. This month's agenda includes 10 transactions, 1 solid minerals amendment, 4 competitive bids, 3 agriculture and 1 recreation, as well as 5 new leases comprised of 1 agriculture, 1 commercial, 2 recreation, and 1 right-of-way.
Terrific. Any questions or comments for Andy? I do not see any. Let's see if there's any public comment, Nick.
Once again, folks, if you'd like to make a comment, use the raise hand feature. Commissioner, we have no hands.
All right, wonderful. We will need a vote to approve the board leasing agenda and a motion, please.
This is Commissioner Clark. I'd like to move to approve the board leasing agenda for October 2022.
Terrific. Motion from Commissioner Clark. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second, Commissioner Frobe. Let's call a vote. Commissioner Heath,
Aye.
Commissioner Chavez,
Yes.
Commissioner Frobe,
Aye.
and Commissioner Clark.
Aye.
And the chair votes yes, that motion passes 5-0. All right, with that, I think that is all that we have on the agenda that I can see. We have minutes. Does anyone have any revisions to the minutes to offer? All right, the minutes pass with by acclamation. And Bill, I think you wanted to talk about dates for 2023.
A couple of things for upcoming months. First, for November, that is still planning to be a one-day meeting. It'll be on November 9th. It'll take place here. The morning will be a workshop around affordable housing and a tour of the project down the street. And the afternoon is a pretty full afternoon of business, picking up some of the REPI things that we talked about a couple months ago. But you should, if you would, please leave your full days blocked out but just the one day.
Yep.
For December, the meeting will be on Thursday, the 15th. We're still fleshing out the agenda, but right now it looks like just a couple of hours in the morning, mostly information items, report outs about revenue updates around stewardship, around line of business readouts from prior year's work and where we're trying to go with those. And then that will be followed by a lunch meeting. This will all take place at the Grant Humphreys Mansion here in pretty close to the office. And we will be giving some awards, not only to staff who've done great things, but to some exceptional lessees and partners. So I hope you'll all be able to attend that nice lunch and honor our lessees. So then on to,
just real quick, Bill, I have a flight out that at 11:45 that afternoon for vacation, but I'm gonna try and come by in the morning. I'm bummed to miss lunch. It's always that is just such an awesome event. Super, super great to do.
thank you. So on to 2023, and we're a little late in doing this year, but I want to at least get you all thinking about what would work, and we'll make a proposed calendar that you can approve at the next meeting. But what we've been doing for the past several years is blocking out the second Wednesday and Thursday of every month. As you know, when we travel during the summer months or during the nicer weather, we generally need both of those days. When we don't travel, we work hard to give you back the days. So I want to be respectful of the fact that you are citizen volunteers and try and be respectful of your time. But in general, it's been Wednesday and Thursday of the second week of the month. So the question I want to ask you all is, some of you may already have other boards you're on or know your calendars for 2023. Does that work as a pattern? And should I put out a sample calendar based on that pattern and see how that works for everybody? And if you don't object to that, I mean, we can do it as Thursdays, Fridays, we can do Monday, Tuesday. We work for you all, so we'll make it work for staff. But I want to do what we can do to get the highest commissioner attendance at the most meetings. We value your input.
Yeah, this Phil, I thought those dates worked great this year. I thought it
Okay.
was, I don't know, for me it did.
Commissioner Frog?
I don't have the history that Phil does, but in general, Wednesday, Thursday is a good combo. And I would like to note that fortunately it is the second week, so I would be available probably. I just want to note the 9th of February. I may not be around, so hopefully it's just a Thursday meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, that I'm fine with this as well. I have one conflict. My board meeting is in Washington on June 7th. So I'm pretty stuck, but I could do probably something virtually on the 8th potentially. So just as, except for that's when we travel. So that just may not work for me. Sadly, I don't get control that date though.
Does it
Commissioner,
matter?
You had mentioned that this pattern worked for you. You emailed back and said the pattern was good for you. Commissioner Clark?
So yeah, the second week is still better. My conflicts are in the first week and the third, so second is good. I don't have exact dates yet, but plan on me probably being out of the country in March.
Okay. Awesome. So based on this feedback, I'll put together a draft calendar for you all to see, where to lay out the whole year, and we'll bless that and publish that for our interested public. I'd also, go ahead, sorry.
No, that sounds good. We know things always change, but we have to start somewhere, and I think it pretty much works more often than not.
Then the second thing I'll ask you to comment on in November is, are there places you want to go or things you want to see in 2023? We try to drive a lot of those workshops and visits to places around upcoming business. We want you to be able to sort of see it in relative proximity to when you're going to need to vote on something. And so we've had that pattern, but we also can create workshops or bring in outside experts around topics that you want to learn more about, or specific lessees or assets that you want to meet with. We're always, part of our strategic plan is making sure that we help you be as educated as you can for the decision-making that we're asking of you. And so as you think about this over the next 30 days, give me any ideas of places you want to go, topics you want to discuss, that sort of stuff. And staff will work to build agendas around that.
I had one, oh, go ahead, whoever was.
Sorry, I was just curious if maybe we could see kind of a list of the places that that the board has gone in the past kind of 5 years. I think it's helpful to see the topics that have been covered, the geography that's been covered. So we'll also match it to what we're voting on. But if they're kind of, we're like, just able to see, oh, we really haven't been to this area in a while. I just think that would be helpful.
I've got a big master list of all of that.
Yeah, I figure. Thanks.
The only thing I was going to bring up, a number of months ago, Vanessa was talking about Water Congress in January, I believe, end of January. I know not for a meeting, but if that's something that with our new water position person, that it might be, if commissioners have time to, attend that. I think it's a great event, and I don't know if we're members of that. Pardon me?
What's the date of it?
It's you. If Vanessa's still on, she would probably know, but it's usually the end of January, around Denver area. But it's just a great.
I'm just looking for those dates. I'll get back to you in just a sec.
Okay. And we've already had some internal discussions. Now that we have a new water program manager, I think this is a great opportunity for us to, pardon the pun, do a deep dive on water again. And
We can't dive as deeply as we used to.
Yeah, that's the truth.
Yep.
And Bill, we've done a lot of work on water and know a couple of really good potential speakers, if that's at all helpful.
Great. Okay, awesome.
Yeah, those water issues aren't going away, I don't think.
No, no.
Okay, anything else for the good of the order? It's gonna be a record meeting.
I know. I'm grateful since, you know, the struggle is
Yeah.
real over here. What I learned is as I've aged, the bounce is not really, it's more thud-like than bounce-like. In so many ways, travel just being one.
That's awesome. Okay.
All right, appreciate y'all. I think we are adjourned.
I think
Thank
that
you,
does it.
everybody.
Thank you all. Good to see everybody.
Take care. Thanks, bye-bye.